LaxFactor Podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? This is another episode of the LaxFactor Podcast. I've gotten my count straight, so we're on episode number 48 at this point, and today we're going to talk about the top returning defenders in 2020. I usually start these lists with attackmen and midfielders, and I always skimp on the defense. So today for the defenders, you get a treat. I'm going to do the defenders. I'm going to talk about 5 guys. I'm not going to put them in any order other than the guy who I think is the best all-around defender in the country. I'm going to do last. Everybody else, any one of these guys you would take, hands down. So the order, don't worry about that. But I'm going to talk about 5 guys that I like that statistically did well, and a couple of them didn't do well statistically, but we'll talk about why to a degree. And then I'll get a little bit into talking about some honorable mentions because there's just too many defensemen to go off of here. So let's start here with Gibson Smith, Georgetown. He was a sophomore in 2019, will be a junior in 2020. Big kid, solid kid, not a big kid, but a very solid size defender at 6 foot 195. He was a USILA honorable mention All-American, as well as an Inside Lacrosse third team All-American, All Big East second team as well. In the 2019 season, 2 goals, and I had to double check this because it didn't sound like it was an accurate statistic, but 106 ground balls as a close defenseman. That was a lot of ground balls. And then 34 caused turnovers. So, I mean, the kid put up stats. Georgetown played a lot of games, and they're a quality team that ends up playing a slightly lesser schedule than a bunch of than quality teams of their stature would typically play. And that works out. It just worked out well because they had a really good senior-laden team last year. So Smith, as a young defender, played really well for the Hoyas all the way through the season. He looked like a baby in his picture. You should be seeing his picture here. And in that picture, I thought the kid looks like he's about 14 years old. Started all 17 games. Those numbers, though, 106 ground balls, that just doesn't, it was a lot. 34 caused turnovers. I almost thought it was a mistake at first, simply because it was so high, and this isn't a kid that I had heard mentioned a lot. I had watched Georgetown play a couple of times, so he was on my radar, but not as a, potential. At the time I watched him, I didn't know I was watching a kid that was going to end up being an honorable mention All-American third team, so on and so forth. So he was huge in their defense, and their defense was solid. They held teams in 2019 to somewhere in the area of the 8s. So, he was a big part of that defense that held teams to under 9 goals a game throughout the season. So Gibson Smith in 2020, he's going to be, a guy to watch and will hopefully improve upon his numbers. Obviously, he's going to end up drawing a lot of really quality players, though. So it's one of those things where I like to kind of predict the numbers, and I bet you do not see 106 ground balls and 34 caused turnovers out of this kid again, because he's going to fall victim to the same disease that guys like Nick Mellen and Chris Fake have fallen victim to in terms of being able to accumulate stats. But we'll talk about that in a bit. This guy, I could have, if I was putting them in order, he'd probably be higher up the list. But once again, I mean, there's not a bad defender on this list that I'm going to talk about here. Koby Smith, Towson, number 54, a junior in 2020. He was a sophomore last year, one of the best cover guys in the country last year as a sophomore. 6 foot 205, so a solid kid. He's built like a brick shit house. A USILA third team All-American, as well as an Inside Lacrosse third team, all ECAC first team, only sophomore on the ECAC's first team list, actually. And Smith, he puts up points, 6 goals, 4 assists. He actually had 3 of those assists in a single game against Mount St. Mary's. I watched that game. 30 ground balls, 20 caused turnovers. The kid's all over the field, though, more importantly. So, yes, you can put him on Jared Bernhardt, and he will hold his own against one of the best attackmen in the country. And then you can put him, in transition. He's going to get up the field and score goals and feed and actually carry the ball a little bit, hold the ball a little bit as guys are filling in down the field. Kid's got a really high lacrosse IQ. So getting up the field is the main thing, though. Like when you have a defender that can both cover and play ridiculously well in transition, that's a rare thing. The kid is a gem, and that's why he is, I think, legitimately probably one of the best 5 defenders in the country coming into next season, and he may have been last year as well. Physical, will beat people, will play very much like Chris Fake, although I will say I think Smith may actually be a little bit more under control in the way that he plays physical, but he will throw his body around, and he's got a fairly substantial body. He's capable in scraps. He's going to pick up ground balls where you need him, so he's very capable in that way. He's honestly, I think he's my favorite defender. Another guy I'm going to talk about is similar to him, albeit I think he may be a better cover guy, and he may be that more of a lockdown type defender than the other guy I'm going to talk about later. So he's my favorite defender in this junior class, even though one of the guys I'm going to talk about is a Syracuse player. Not the all right. He's not the best on-ball defender in this group, I don't think necessarily, but he's going to be probably the fourth best on-ball defender in the country. And that may be a hot take. I'm not sure. Some people may disagree with that. But the next three guys that I'm going to talk about, I think they are all better on-ball defenders than he is, but he is not far behind them for certain. I don't even know why I had that note in there. It's kind of a cut down, and there's no need to cut this kid down. He is filthy. But his 10 points, regardless, the fact that he can both D up on guys and put up 10 points in a season makes him by far one of the most dangerous defenders in the country. He can yard sail you and score a goal within 10 seconds, and that is a rare thing to have in a defender, but he is fully capable of doing exactly that. Now, the next guy we're going to talk about here, his name is none other than Chris Fake, number 31, junior defender for Yale, 6'1", 205, very substantial kid, takes up a lot of space on the field. Second team USILA and third team IL All-American, first team All-Ivy, All-Ivy. Yale's Christian Prince Memorial Award winner for the best defensive player of the year at Yale. 26 ground balls, 13 caused turnovers. Now, this is where we get into, I'm mentioning guys as being, these I think are the top three defenders in the country that I have left here. And we're getting into a space where they don't have stats to back it up because these other guys further up the list have much better stats. I mean, you look at the kid from Georgetown and he's got 106 ground balls. So Fake, 26 ground balls, 13 caused turnovers. Why is one of the best defenders in the country have stats that are so minor and unimpressive? And it's simply because people don't go near him. And you're going to see that with the next guy I talk about too, but people do not go near Fake. If your best attackman, if he draws Fake, he gets a few less looks over the course of that game by design because it's just a matter of playing the odds. And the odds are Fake is going to beat the hell out of him, and the odds are that Fake could take his candy and make him feel bad. And if you ever want to see Lacrosse Analytics, one of our friend channels here, he does a great job with breaking down defenders, specifically highlights. And if you want to just search Chris Fake 2019 or Chris Fake 2018 highlights, and maybe even specifically throw in Lacrosse Analytics in that search string, and you will see what I'm talking about. This dude beats on people. By far the meanest and the most aggressive and the most physical defender in the country coming back. People are scared of him, not only because he's a quality defender, but a lot of times as an attackman, when you play a defender that beats on people, you knew you were still good for 3 or 4 goals against that guy because he was going to make mistakes. Fake will make mistakes, typically off ball, related, maybe trying to help a little bit too much, but when it comes to covering guys and beating on them, he makes very few mistakes. That's why his stats do not speak to the quality and to his accolades that he's received. Beats people on top of it. He has improved off ball between his freshman and his freshman year. He was pretty bad off ball when you watch the tape. His sophomore year, he improved a great deal off ball, and it was just a little bit more controlled in terms of he understood a little bit more when he had to go and when he doesn't, and when he's trying to do too much and when he doesn't. And to boot, I think they, kind of really make him focus on the guy that he's beaten on also. He's going to slap, push, body, slash, poke, wrap, active stick as you're running, will push, slap, push, poke. I mean, his stick is one of the most active sticks in the country as he's guarding you, and it's usually going to be laying lumber in some way. Even his poke checks are brutal. And like many on the list, due to the caliber of the players he guards, he doesn't force a lot of turnovers. That's the other reason. Yes, even where he's not getting as many chances to take the ball away, but even where he does, he's facing the best attackman every time out. So that contributes to his numbers being a little bit lower. But Chris Fake is the real deal, and will probably be a first and second team All-American next year, if not a first team All-American all across the board. There was a lot of really good senior defenders, which is why some of these guys I'm talking about, you would think they would have been first team All-Americans, and they weren't, simply because a lot of quality defenders last year in 2019. Next guy. One of the guys I love, Nick Mellen, number 21 out of Syracuse. He'll be a senior in 2020, 5'9", 185. So he is the smallest guy on this list by far. Second team USILA and IL All-American, Twarton nominee, All ACC, started all 14 games, and the stats don't speak to the fact that he was a Twarton nominee or why he was a Twarton nominee. 31 ground balls, 19 caused turnovers. So again, we're seeing a quality defender that just gets avoided like he has AIDS in its 1980. And that's the truth of it. People just don't want to go on him. You're going to see clips that I'm rolling here as I'm talking of him guarding Jeff Teat specifically, and even Teat barely tests him. It's actually hard to find highlights without spending hours, which I just don't have time to spend for these podcast videos, as it's mostly for audio purposes. But Nick Mellen, one of the best on-ball defenders, widely regarded as the best or one of the top 2 on-ball defenders in the country, and I think Chris Fake is typically the other guy that people throw into that conversation. But legit, and yes, Pat Spencer did murder him, but in fairness to Nick Mellen, Pat Spencer murdered everybody, and that was a really bad matchup. Probably the better way to play Spencer for Syracuse, because their best defender was so undersized compared to him, would have been to put either just anybody that was bigger on him, maybe even go Bomberry, even though Bomberry would get absolutely murdered as well, but go with the big guy that slashes and beats people, and then come with early help or something like that. It worked for a while, letting Spencer eat Mellen up, because they put Mellen on the island against Spencer. That was by design, that Spencer ate him up. They were going to let Spencer get his and try to shut everybody else down. And it did work early in that game until it stopped working and other guys started, getting open as other guys started breaking down on the Syracuse defense, and Syracuse lost that game. But Mellen, don't let that fool you. One of the best defenders in the country despite that, and he's one of the best cover guys in the country despite that. It was just a really bad matchup. No one else that he faced that year did that to him. Mostly guys didn't test him all year, but yeah, he did not fare like that game was the only game that he got owned all season. He's as solid as they get. At home, very, very much an at-home defender. You're not going to see him. He's the opposite of Chris Fake. You're not going to see him throw his stick around like crazy. He's going to wait for the checks. He's going to play good position defense, more feet guy, and with just getting checks on people's hands than a real takeaway defender anyway. Just one of the best. Doesn't take unnecessary chances, but he will take your candy if it's presented. So one of the best overall defenders in the game, widely regarded as a lockdown pole. Nick Mellen should be a first team All-American across the board next year. And the last guy I want to talk about before I talk about the honorable mentions, not the best cover guy in the country, but I think overall one of the best all-around poles in the game, JT Giles-Harris of Duke. He'll be a senior this year coming up for Duke. 5'10", so he's a little bit on the shorter side, but 210, so big body. First team All-American, USILA, and Inside Lacrosse, ACC Defensive Player of the Year, All ACC, Twarton Award nominee. And once again, the stats don't speak to his quality. 38 ground balls, 26 caused turnovers. Not huge stats, but given that people do avoid him and he still took the ball away and they put him all over the field, can guard any type of player. And specifically, he roams the field like that. You find him all over the place, better than any defender in the country. He's a field general, great help defender, but sometimes at the cost of losing his own guy. If the second slide doesn't make it, so I did notice a lot on tape where he went and it ended up being his guy that would burn them, but that's not necessarily his fault. The 2 slide doesn't get there, and maybe he went early, so it does fall victim to trying to do too much at times, but more than makes up for it with his team leadership and just him being an all-around pimp. Can guard players all over the field, midfielders, attackmen, big guys, little guys. He has the skill set to pretty much handle anybody. And I think that overall, he's probably the best overall defender on the list simply because of that. He can play off ball. He can run the defense. He can be vocal. He can hit people. He can get on a wing on a face-off and pick up a ground ball. The utility that this kid presents is just off the chart, and that's what makes him so valuable. His IQ is just really, really high, and I think he'll end up being a legitimate Twarton nominee, and I think that he might even be a defender that could eke himself into a finalist spot, just because he has all eyeballs on him, and he seems to be very comfortable with the spotlight on him. So it'll be interesting to see how he does next year. Duke lost some pieces to the defensive puzzle last year, so he's going to be looked upon to anchor everything once again, and then help some of the younger guys step up. But they have a lot of really good defenders coming in as well. And what stinks about this is there's too many good defenders that we at least have to go through and do like a roll call of other guys. And I'm not going to get into any of these guys for the most part outside of just mentioning their names and then ripping off a couple of stats for them. But I also want to show you that when I rip off these stats, these are big stat-getting defenders, even though these guys aren't big award-winning defenders. So first one, Jack Drillock, senior. He'll be a senior at Siena in 2020, 30 caused turnovers. That's a lot. Kyle Stofko, junior, Wagner, 30 caused turnovers. Brandon Salvatore, senior this upcoming season at Cornell, 32 caused turnovers and 74 GBs. So Salvatore, I believe he may have been an honorable mention All-American, actually. The only one in this list, I think. But he's a quality pull up there in Ithaca. Peter Rizzotti, sophomore, Dartmouth, 27 caused turnovers. Colin Kasner, junior, UMBC, 31 caused turnovers. Reece, Eddy, he'll be a senior at Boston U, 34 caused turnovers. Bryan McIntosh, junior at the Mount St. Mary's, 32 caused turnovers. I watched him play Towson. And just to give you an idea of how many more opportunities some of these guys at the smaller schools get. Johnny Surdick, who I think was probably the best pull in the country last year, is tied for 13th in caused turnovers with Bryan McIntosh, the junior out of the Mount. 32 caused turnovers for Johnny Surdick, and he's tied for 13th in the country, and he was probably the best pull in the country. So that just gives you an idea at how many more opportunities these guys at the smaller schools get. And what it ends up what the reality is any one of these guys could play anywhere. The fact that, McIntosh is at the Mount is the reason he ends up with 32 caused turnovers, because he ends up playing slightly lesser talent than, say, Surdick does on average, and he's just that much better than everybody else. So these guys are all worth mentioning, and I wish I could go into more about all of them, but alas, I just don't have that kind of time. So as always, if you'd like to support the channel, simply go to LaxFactor.com, buy yourself some swag, or you can go to the soon-to-be-posted LaxFactor.com/support, and that will outline some other options for you. We will be moving into a sort of subscription service, and people had been upset and had talked about oh, no, don't do that. But the reality is we're going to actually put more content, podcast type and talk type content on YouTube than we ever have in the past, all for free. But we'll also put some stuff behind a subscription. And I think we're actually going to run that subscription for free through February 1st of 2020. So everyone can get a free taste while it's in beta. But it will not take away anything from what we do on YouTube. We'll still put everything out on YouTube and all the same shows. We'll actually have a slightly tighter schedule moving forward, starting in October, where we'll have defined shows that we're going to do released on defined days at defined times. For that matter, I keep trying to get into the live. The live stuff is a little bit harder because the streaming aspect of that, it gets a little bit difficult. But overall, if you want to support us, LaxFactor.com or LaxFactor.com/support. Other than that, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified when we put out new videos. Thank you for watching and enjoy.